A lot of times when people are being brutally honest, they focus more on the brutal part than the honest part. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're talking about Married at First Sight, season 12, episode 13. So the title of this episode was called Unanswered Questions, and so much happened in this episode. Like, I don't even know where to start. When I was watching it, I wasn't even taking notes the whole time because it was just so much to process. So to recap what happened, all of the couples met with either Pastor Cal or Dr. Pepper individually. They gave them updates on what's been going on in their marriage and then told them any unanswered questions that they might have about their spouse. And so much transpired. Yeah, let's just get right into it. All right, so this week we're gonna start with Haley and Jacob because they had the least amount of stuff going on, in my opinion. And so let me paint the picture of like how each of these meetings went, and then it'll be consistent like that for the rest of the episode. So each individual met with either Pastor Cal, Dr. Pepper, and then they talked about whatever they talked about, and then they went back to their apartments and then discussed what they talked about with their individual people. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so Haley met with Dr. Pepper, Jacob met with Pastor Cal, and then they went back to their apartment, talked about what they talked about. So Jacob talked about how this whole process has been playing by Haley's rules and that he's made these changes for her and nothing is changing in their relationship. And Pastor Cal asked him, like, what is one question that you have that you just really want Haley to answer? Like, all the walls are down, like complete vulnerability. She'll be completely honest, all that stuff. And he said, I really want to know why she pulled away from me in Vegas. So if you remember, they were in Vegas. Things were okay maybe for like the first 2 days, maybe 3 days. And then they had sex. And after that, everything shifted. According to Haley, she said she had sex because she felt like she had to, or more so because she was just caught up in the whirlwind of this whole Married at First Sight thing. And she had sex with him. I think they were also drunk on that night. So she was just caught up in all of that. Then after that, I guess she was just like, whoa, what the heck? And she just completely has not been into him ever since then. And so Jacob wants to know the truth as to why that all happened because she has not been completely honest with him during all of that. I think his question should have been, are you physically attracted to me? Because she would have not been truthful, but I think he needs to know that because I don't think she's physically attracted to him. And that is a huge reason why this relationship is not progressing, on top of all of the other quirks that she just doesn't care for about him. Jacob also wanted to know what are Haley's expectations of a husband, which I thought was a really good question because I think whatever her answer is, like, her expectations are just not him. And so I just hate that, like, he's really doing like all the things to be like, you know, tell me what you want and tell me what you need and I will do those things for you. But like, when the person you're talking to is just not your person, then like, it doesn't matter what they say, like, you will never be the right one for them. You know what I'm saying? And so like, I just hate that like, he's still trying to make this work when like, it's clear that like, Haley does not want this. And so like, she could literally list all the qualities or characteristics that Jacob actually possesses, but like, she will still be like, yeah, but you're the one who possesses those and I don't like you. So yeah, Haley met with Dr. Pepper. And first of all, let me tell y'all, Dr. Pepper came in hot on this episode. Everybody who she met with, she was not playing games. She was asking all of the hard-hitting questions. She was just really trying to get to the bottom of like why people were doing the things they're doing or like how they're feeling and all this stuff. I was here for it. So she talked to Haley about how like Jacob has made all these changes for her, but it doesn't look like she's made any changes for him. And then the editors are childish because they went through this whole montage of like all the things that Jacob's been changing, like trying not to talk about his quirks or changing his clothes or insert whatever else he was doing to change for her. Dr. Pepper was like, are you sensitive to other people's expectations? And Haley started crying and she's just like, you know, I was in this really controlling relationship for like 5 years and I felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so now I'm in this place where like, I don't want to be controlled by somebody. And so I guess she thinks that Jacob's actions are somewhat controlling. I don't know. It don't really make sense to me. But I guess to correlate that, she's like, she doesn't want to make changes for him because I guess she made changes for her relationship in the past, hence the controllingness. So she's just like, I don't want to make any changes. But ironically, she's coming off controlling maybe because she's like, well, why don't you make these changes for me? I don't know. Very interesting dynamic going on. But Dr. Pepper did say, like, girl, it's still worth fighting for. Like, I want you to, like, put everything into this marriage before you actually give up. And I was like, girl, no, this is over. Like, there is nothing else worth fighting for in this relationship. This marriage is over. I wish they would both just be real with themselves and recognize this. And I think that's part of the reason why Jacob hasn't been really receptive to Haley's conversations recently, because she's been trying to get to know him. And remember, she said she feels like she's just interviewing him or interrogating him, and he'll just give like these very like dull answers. And I think it's because he's not into this anymore. And like Haley's somewhat effort of trying is just not what he wants anymore. Like, I think he's done. They met back up at their apartment, talked about all this stuff. Haley did ask him about, like, you know, when I've been trying to talk to you, you haven't really been receptive. Like, what's going on with that? They did show a flashback to when she asked about like what his life has been like in Atlanta the past 10 years, how his answer was pretty like shallow because all of his friends have started settling down and getting married and having kids. And so by the time he turned 33, he was just like, I am hard down trying to find a wife at this point. And so he's just really been like on the dating scene and trying to like settle down and find his person. And then Haley talked to him about how she was in that controlling relationship, and like that's the reason why she wants her space so much. And so maybe that was some insight for Jacob to know like why Haley acts the way that she does. Overall, I don't really feel like there was like a wrap-up conclusion for them. I truly believe like this relationship is not going to last past decision day. They are just in this for the rest of the experiment at this point. Yeah, like I think they're both trying for the sake of the experiment. They're trying for the sake of TV. They're trying for the sake of their contract, whatever it is. But I think at this point, Haley's been checked out and Jacob is now at the lobby about to check out as well. Like, I think they're done. So, all right, next is Briana and Vincent. So before they met with Dr. Pepper and Pastor Cal, they had a discussion about their finances. I was very interested to see how this conversation was going to go because typically finances can be a real like point of contention between couples. And so they did not disappoint. It was very interesting combo. They sat down, they had a little spreadsheet going, and Briana was listing out their monthly expenses. Some of the expenses were things that would be between the both of them, and some of them were just like her expenses. And so they were doing like $500 for groceries, $250 for her hair, $400 for her clothes. Yes, that looks like a lot, but I was also like, girl, that's similar to my budget. So like, I get it. But Vinny's face the whole time was like, like he was shook to his core, okay? He was just like, oh, their entertainment budget was like $300. And he was like, I don't understand why we need to spend so much money on entertainment when we have a pool table and a TV in the house. And Briana was like, excuse me? Like, she was like, that is not enough. And she was like, yeah, we're married, but I still want us to continue to date each other and, you know, take each other out and stuff. And Vinny was just like, well, I've lived this lavish lifestyle already. I've had the nice cars. I've traveled. I've done all this stuff. And like, now I just, you know, want to focus more on saving more and spending less. And my initial reaction was like, since when is living a life of lavish like a phase? Like, no, I'm always going to want the things that I deserve and want the finer things because that's what I want and that's what I deserve. You know what I'm saying? I also understand that like he just started his business, and so he probably doesn't have the money to spend on these things. He also comes across as this very like prideful person. Like, he probably subscribes to the whole like I'm a man's man type mentality, and so he probably doesn't want Briana paying for all of their dates and stuff. But I also don't know if Briana made that budget with him paying for those in mind either. Like, I don't know. It was things that either they didn't talk about or they didn't show that like I think those were unanswered questions. Like, who's paying for these dates? Like, are we both going in on this? Like, oh, and they were also talking about savings, which I think they really should have. Well, let me back up. They also mentioned savings, but they didn't have the deeper conversation about it, or they didn't show it, because Vinny kept saying like, you know, I want to save. And Briana was like, well, I have a savings. And so my question would have been like, what are the savings goals? And like, how much are we like going to save? Because I feel like if you're paying yourself first, then like do whatever else you want with your money. But they were kind of like dancing around that topic and not really addressing it. And so like, I just want to know like, what were the savings goals? Because as long as they're doing that, then everything else should be fine. You know what I'm saying? Also, I thought it was interesting that like last week, Vinny was naming all these places he wants to go. And he was like, yeah, girl, you're going to pay for it. And so I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what his mindset was. I wish I could have seen them delve deeper into that conversation, because it's clearly something they're going to have to like work out, because they're not on the same page with it at all. Briana did meet with Dr. Pepper and brought it up briefly, talked about how they have different viewpoints on finances, how she works hard for her money, so she wants to live a life where she's experiencing life and enjoying life, whereas Vinny is more frugal. Just something they need to discuss deeper amongst themselves. In addition to that, with Dr. Pepper's conversation with Briana, they talked about how Briana has a fear of being pregnant because she has high blood pressure. She hasn't had this discussion with Vinny. I think she told him that she has high blood pressure, but I don't think she said that she's afraid to be pregnant. When she's pregnant, her blood pressure will just elevate even higher, and she's nervous that something will happen to her, which is a valid fear. And so she's nervous to tell Vinny this because she doesn't know how he's going to react. Dr. Pepper was like coaching her through how to bring this up to him and saying like, you know, you need to have this discussion, because having kids is like, that's like a deal breaker for people. You know what I'm saying? And so she does talk to him about it. What I wish they would have said, or what I want to know about her, is like, you can have a fear of something but still want to go through with it. Because me personally, I'm also afraid of being pregnant. I'm afraid of childbirth. I'm afraid of how my body will react and how it'll just be in general after giving birth. But like, I still want to have children. You know what I'm saying? And so, because his reaction was kind of like, oh, I could be a divorced man because like, I want kids. Like, I can't imagine my life like I'm on my deathbed and my kids aren't surrounding me, that kind of thing, right? And so like, I just want to know, is she afraid but also still wants them? Or is she teetering on the like brink of like, I don't want them at all? You know what I'm saying? Because when I was watching this, one of my initial reactions was like, I think men are just like, I want children, therefore you need to provide one for me. And I don't think they think about all of the things that women have to think about when carrying a child, giving birth, and then post-pregnancy. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, I understood where he was coming from, and I could also understand how it's hard to like take in everything that she's saying, but it needs to be heard and understood and validated. You know what I'm saying? Because like, so many things that I'm not even aware of go on while you're pregnant and all this stuff. And so it's just like, that's scary. Like, and so I just want him to be more understanding of what she's talking about, to kind of just reassure her with her fears or validate her fears. You know what I'm saying? Vinny met with Pastor Cal, and he talked about how communication is like their struggle point right now. And it's this whole thing about how Briana wants Vinny to get up early in the morning like she does, but Vinny was saying like, you know, he wants a few more hours of sleep and he's like exhausted, he wants to rest. But Briana will be like, okay, I'm gonna give you like 10 more minutes, boy, get up. He was telling Pastor Cal that like, I feel bad for not getting up when she wants me to get up, but I be tired. Like, and I think she thinks I'm being lazy. Pastor Cal was just like, you know, sometimes you have to be a little selfish to do what's right for you, because like, if you're not your best self, then you can't even be there for her the way that she needs you to be. And like, part of being your best self is getting enough sleep so that you're well rested. Vinny was just like, you know, I needed to hear that, because he's a very like people pleasing type husband, which, you know, I'll subscribe to, like happy wife, happy life. But it's like, don't do it to the detriment of yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that girl will be all right. Like, have the conversation with her that like, you're not being lazy. You're legitimately tired. You're exhausted. Like, you're working whatever hours you're working the day before. And so like, let me sleep, girl. And when they had the conversation together, she was just like, well, you know, I just feel like when you get up in the morning early, you can be so much more productive with your day and get more things done. And I was like, well, what if I don't have anything to do during the day? Like, girl, you can go ahead and run around to the grocery store and whatever else you got to do. But like, no, I'm gonna be in bed. I don't know. I understood where Vinny was coming from, because don't be waking me up just because you want to get up. Like, if I want to stay in this bed, let me stay in this bed. And so with that, Vinny was like, well, what can the compromise be? She must not know the definition of compromise. She needs to watch my video from last week when I talked about the difference between compromise and sacrifice, because she was just like, well, the compromise can be you going to bed earlier so you get up earlier. And I was like, girl, that's him changing for you. Like, what are you going to do to accommodate him. And Vinny tried to like say that to her. Like he was like, no, what is our compromise? And she was just like, you know, you can also get off your phone when you're in the bed at night. Like that doesn't help you go to sleep earlier. And I was like, girl, like, no, like, and you know, he's a very like passive person. Like he's not going to just directly say what he's feeling, but like that needed to be a time where he would have been like, girl, what are you gonna do? Like, no, it was crazy. Overall with them, I just think they are on a good track, but they just need to have deeper conversations about these very important topics, finances and children. Okay. They were just having conversations adjacent to the ones that they needed to have. And so I still think they're going to be fine, but they just need to have some difficult conversations. It's going to be real uncomfortable. They have to be very honest and transparent with each other. And I think after they have those conversations, then they'll be in a better headspace. Okay, on to Virginia and Erik. Whew, they stress me out. Okay, so Virginia's sister stopped by to hang out with Virginia or whatever. And the main thing I got from that conversation was that her sister said, well, if you know, you know, like, you know, if this person is the person you should spend the rest of your life with or not. Because Virginia was telling her about all of their disagreements, like how they don't know where they're going to live after decision day because she wants to get their own place. He wants to stay in his current house. The disagreements with Rocky and how Rocky is clearly a horrible dog, how they have different social and political views, all of this stuff. And her sister was just kind of like, okay, girl, like, with the evidence that you're giving me right now, it sounds like y'all need to part ways. So Virginia met with Pastor Cal, and she talked about how she's afraid of being pregnant, afraid of being a mom because of her childhood, because she didn't have the best childhood and she doesn't want to scar her children and ruin them for life. And I was just like, very valid fear, because I'm sure a lot of moms and people who want to be moms have that fear as well, me included, because I don't want to just completely ruin my child's life because of something I did unintentionally and now they're a horrible person. You know what I'm saying? So Pastor Cal was talking her through that. He was saying, like, you know, the fact that you are afraid of being a mom shows that you will be a good mom. Virginia was saying, like, she remembers things from her childhood that she was talking to her dad about, and her dad was like, wow, I have no idea that you even remembered that. And she was like, yeah, like, so I don't want to give my children those experiences. Like, I'm fine being the fun auntie. Like, I'm fine with nieces and nephews. I don't need to be an actual mother. So she was saying how Erik talks about that as if like it's a complete ultimatum. Like, if you don't want kids, then we're done. And so she doesn't know how to like proceed with this whole situation because she wants this marriage to work with her and Erik, but she's also standing strong like in her feelings about children. Side note, I will add that I didn't really appreciate how Pastor Cal was trying to change her perception on having children, mainly because like, I feel like he was coming from the standpoint of like, this is a TV show, we matched y'all together, we want to keep our success rate up, and so we want y'all to stay married, because like, I feel like if he just would have like let that go, then like they know they would get divorced because Erik wants children, right? And so, I don't know, like the woman empowerment part of me was just kind of like, if I said I don't want children, then I don't want children. Like, don't try to change my mind on it. Don't try to make me see it from a different way. Because I feel like a lot of times, like if a woman says she doesn't want children, then it's kind of like, oh, well, like, tell me more about that. Like, why don't you want children? Like, what's wrong with you, essentially? You know what I'm saying? When I just feel like if I don't want kids, then I don't want kids. Like, leave me alone. Granted, I could be reading more into this, but like, I just did it like that. Like, that was one of the first thoughts that came to my head, where it's just like, don't question her on this decision. Like, let her, like, if she wants to change her mind, let her change her mind on her own. Like, I feel like children, that's too big of a decision to just be convinced to make. Does that make sense? Like, I don't need to be convinced to have children. Like, I feel like either I want them or I don't. You know what I'm saying? Virginia also talked about how Erik just sees marriage differently than she does. Like, they have a different vision for what marriage will look like. And she sees marriage as like being this loyalty type of thing. I'm there for you whenever you need me. Like, we're just like ride or dies, essentially. She doesn't really know what Erik's vision is. And so Pastor Cal suggested like having that conversation so that they can get on the same page. Because like, if they don't even have the same like marriage goals, like the same vision for their lives, then like, this won't really work out either, you know? So Erik meets with Dr. Pepper, they start off talking about, well, no, they start off with Erik saying like, we're good, we're great, like this is fine. Of course, being the regular delusional man that he is. And so Dr. Pepper was like, okay, well, like, let's talk about what's really going on. So let's talk about this dog. Erik was just like, you know, like, I love Rocky, but like he needs more training. He needs to be well-mannered. He needs to be like me, but in dog version, right? And Dr. Pepper was like, why are you so obsessed with this dog? Like Mariah Carey, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, no. But she was like, why are you so obsessed with being this dog's dad? She compared it to like, if it was an actual human child, like if this was her child, then you wouldn't be this aggressive with trying to parent this human. And so not to compare animals and humans, but like maybe you need to see it in this light to really understand, but like let the relationship just gradually happen over time instead of just being like, this is my dog. You know what I'm saying? And that really messed him up in the head because he did not see it like that. And he was just like, okay, like I can let that go. Fine. So then they move on to talking about the time that they spend together in the marriage. And Dr. Pepper was saying like, you know, it's fine for you to ask for like 1 weekend a month in terms of quality time because Virginia hangs out with her friends a lot. And that was like a point of contention between them. Like, I have plans with my friends. I'm not going to cancel plans with them. And so Erik was just like, okay, well, what about me? Dr. Pepper was saying like, when you do have these conversations though, like make sure that y'all are both sober. And she was alluding to the fact that like, you know, Virginia's always drunk, right? As Chris said, a drunkard. Erik was just like, yeah, like her drinking can be a lot. I will talk to her about that. Like I will bring that up, that I want us to both be like in the right headspace because sometimes alcohol can really elevate a conversation to a level that it didn't necessarily need to be at. You know what I'm saying? And then Dr. Pepper was saying like, okay, like, yes, you will have these conversations, but when you do, remember to watch your tone, watch how you're talking to her. Like you can be honest without being cruel. And I was like, yes, Dr. Pepper, tell him, because we all know this man can be very condescending when talking to her. And I don't appreciate it. Like, I feel like he's the type of man where he's just like, well, I'm being brutally honest. And it's just like, a lot of times when people are being brutally honest, they focus more on the brutal part than the honest part. And so then it's just like, I don't even hear the honesty because you're just being rude. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciated her for saying that. And I hope that he really takes that into consideration, not just for this next conversation, but just going forward in life, because he needs to stop being a typical white man, just talking to people any kind of way and thinking that it's fine. Erik and Virginia end up talking together at the apartment. Erik brings up how I'm going to let the whole Rocky situation go. And Virginia was excited about that. She was like, yes, thank you, Dr. Pepper. Hallelujah. So then they talk about the drinking thing. When Dr. Pepper mentioned bringing up Virginia's drinking, I was like, Virginia is not going to be receptive to this because she already thinks that Erik is trying to change her. No matter how he approaches this conversation, it's just going to compound on the fact that like she already thinks he's trying to change him, and this is just another thing he's trying to change. And so I was like, she's definitely not going to be receptive to this. And what happened? She was not receptive to it. He brought it up and she was literally like, I'm not talking about this. Like, she was like, the arguments we've had would have happened with or without alcohol involved. And he was just like, well, I think like when we have these discussions, like we should, you know, not be drinking when having them. And she was like, I'm not talking about this. And I was like, yikes. Okay. So she switched subjects and she talked about the whole having kids thing. She was like, you know, you really speak to me about this in a way as if it's an ultimatum. And he was like, it's not an ultimatum. Like, it's just a deal breaker for me. And I was like, is a deal breaker and an ultimatum not the same thing? I need to Google. I don't know. Because I thought they were synonymous. And he was just like, it's not an ultimatum. It's a deal breaker. And I was like, okay. They didn't really get anywhere with that conversation either, because she wasn't budging on how she feels and he's not budging on how he feels. So then they started talking about the canceling plans thing. And she was just like, I plan my life a week in advance. And so if you could just take that into consideration, that would be nice. He makes it seem like if it is Friday night and he spontaneously wants to go somewhere with her, then she should cancel her plans immediately and go with him because he's her husband. And I was like, that is not how that works. Like, if I make plans, then typically the plans will take precedent over something that you just spontaneously want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could see if you just like, if it was this real like lavish surprise or something, like you've been planning and like, I don't know, it's it's just ridiculous because I already don't like him. And I'm just like, you can't just expect her to cancel plans with her friends because you want to do something, because it's just adding to the fact that you're like controlling already. You know what I'm saying? Like, I also just think this is just a communication issue. They should just communicate their plans with each other as they're made. Like, I don't think it should be Friday night and then it's Friday and he now finds out that she has plans. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like when the plans are made, then just be like, hey, I made plans with my friends for next weekend. I'm gonna be out. And so that way he doesn't plan something because he already knows she has something to do. You know what I'm saying? It's a communication thing. Like, just talk to each other. What? So I feel like they did not have a conclusion to any of their discussions. All of them are still open-ended, and we know that they love to just, here's the rug, sweep the stuff under, and not talk about it. And so everything is going to blow up in their face. I guarantee it, and they're not going to last. Okay, next, let's talk about Paige and Chris. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them because, yes, we all know Chris is a mess. He's garbage. He's horrible. But this week's episode was just really difficult to watch because for me, like, it's just something about somebody who just does not take accountability for their actions. They just really believe that everything that they say is right and that they were perfect in a situation and just believe that they had no part in the demise of it. You know what I'm saying? And that's literally Chris in a nutshell. And I just could not believe the things that were coming out of his mouth. I don't have much to say about it. I can just recap what happened and then we can move on to the rest of the episode. So Chris met with Pastor Cal. He was late. He was supposed to be there at 7 p.m. and he didn't show up until like 7:45. I'm so surprised Pastor Cal waited for him. He was about to pack up and leave, but then Chris just popped in all willy-nilly, like everything was fine. And I was like, so disrespectful and inconsiderate of you to just take advantage of someone's time like that and just be late. So anyway, he sits down and he essentially just talks about how like he was not attracted to Paige, and out of everyone in Atlanta, like that's who y'all chose for me, and he would have never approached Paige in a bar or in church. And I was just like, that those are your two examples? He just couldn't look past the physicality of it all. And Pastor Cal was about to lose his mind while Chris was talking. Chris was just saying like, you know, I did my best in this situation. Pastor Cal mentioned the whole like, well, why'd you buy Mercedes a car? Like, did you really think that was okay? And Chris was like, yeah, I asked her to come with me, which is a lie because when he told Paige about it, Paige didn't know nothing about that car. So he did not bring that up to her beforehand. It's just stuff like that where it's just like, something's literally wrong with him. He needs to really just get himself figured out. And Pastor Cal was calling him out on that stuff because he was like, Chris, you've been engaged twice before this. This current marriage is not working out. So like, you really need to take a look into yourself and do some soul searching and like get it together. And Chris was just sitting there looking stupid as he always does. And like, I'm sure he wasn't really soaking that information up because he thinks that like everything he does is okay. Like no one in his life tries to hold him accountable. And when they do, he cuts them off. I mean, look at what happened with that other pastor where he was telling him about himself and Chris was like, I'm never going to speak to him again. And it's just like, you're a whole man-child. Like, you're crazy. I was so happy to see that he was not in the previews for next week because I'm honestly over him. I know they are still going to have Decision Day, and I did see like a sneak peek for that on this other show I was watching. Actually, I think it was a Married at First Sight special where it showed Decision Day with Chris and Paige, and Chris is saying that like, they haven't made their decision yet. And I'm just like, what do you mean you haven't made your decision yet? Like doing a whole flip-floppy mess that he's been doing all season. Like it's just annoying. And I just hate that Paige has to watch this. And I was embarrassed for her, like that you have to see this man on TV, like basically say that you're unattractive, like when that's not even true. And it was just ridiculous. And I just hate that, like, especially him being a black man, that like he's representing himself on TV this way and like everyone is seeing this and like he's just putting it on display. You know what I'm saying? Like so annoying. But with Paige, she met with Dr. Pepper and Dr. Pepper gave her this really uplifting speech about like knowing your worth and establishing boundaries and sticking to those boundaries and like having conversations with people when they cross those boundaries and just really like knowing what you deserve from a partner. And so Paige was already talking about that kind of stuff in last week's episode, saying like, you know, she knows what she deserves in somebody and she knows her worth and all that stuff. And so hopefully that was just reassuring to hear that from an outside source as well. And so I really hope Paige takes that to heart, and every other woman who was just watching that as well, because Dr. Pepper said some good words. Oh, I was also here for Dr. Pepper calling Chris a narcissist, and she was not here for any of it. Like, she was like, he did these things because he was trying to hurt you. He's a narcissist. Like, he cannot get over himself. And I was like, I completely agree. Again, Dr. Pepper coming in hot, telling it like it is. I just really think Paige is out of the situation. Again, she was not in the previews for next week, which I'm excited about. And I just really hope for the best for her because she deserves it after all of this. Okay, last, let's talk about Clara and Ryan. And you know what they talked about the whole time? Sex, okay? They talked about what they want to go down in the bedroom. First of all, let me say that they both walked into those meetings sounding crazy. They were both like, this marriage is a 10 out of 10. You couldn't have paired me better with anyone else. Like, we have no challenges, no problems. We're great. And I was like, y'all, cut the crap. Like, what are y'all talking about? And Ryan probably did truly feel like this because I don't think he's as self-aware as he lets on sometimes. But Clara, girl, you know you got some issues with this man. So Ryan met with Dr. Pepper. She asked him about the whole religion, raising your kids in the church thing. Ryan was like, yeah, like, I don't want to force Clara to do anything she doesn't want to do. But then Dr. Pepper was like, yes, you don't have to force Clara. However, what about your children? Ryan was like, oh, like, yes, I do want to raise my children in the church, which he had mentioned before, but I don't know why I was like this, some other type of revelation when he was talking to her. And Dr. Pepper was basically like, yeah, y'all need to talk about this because, like, Clara's opinion in this matters when it comes to how you're going to raise your children. And so then they transition into the sex conversation. Dr. Pepper asked him, like, do you know how Clara feels about the lack of sex in the relationship? And he was just like, no, I don't. And I was like, what? How can you not even have any type of idea? Because yeah, she hasn't been completely forthcoming with her feelings, but she's also been like, you could tell that she's been like visibly frustrated at some point or like in some kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And so Dr. Pepper was saying, like, you know, I think you should talk to her about that because from Clara's point of view, the lack of sex could also translate as a lack of commitment. And Ryan was like, oh, like, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, yeah, you did it. Clara met with Pastor Cal and she said all that stuff about like, we're doing good, we're doing great, all whatever. And he was just like, okay, well, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Yeah, that's the song. And so they talk about the whole love situation, like how Ryan has never said he loves anybody. Clara was like, she loves Ryan, but she doesn't want to say it because then that would just make him like clam up and shut down and stuff. Pastor Cal was like, well, you can't not say something because you're afraid of the person's reaction, right? And I think that's something that a lot of us need to hear. I don't think we like want to have conflict. Like most people just look for conflict, but like sometimes conflict is just natural. Healthy conflict is good. You know what I'm saying? And so like we have to just learn how to just say what we're feeling or like what we want or what we need or whatever it is, regardless of the other person's reaction, because like we can't just try to keep the peace all the time because that's not normal. That's not realistic. You know what I'm saying? Like in a relationship, like you're going to have conflict. It's just all about how that conflict manifests itself and like how y'all navigate that conflict. You know what I'm saying? And so like I agree that like she can't just not say what she's feeling just because she wants to keep this like perfect facade going, because again, they're gonna have the same problem as like Virginia and Erik, and stuff's gonna blow up in their face later. It's just gonna be like bubbling up and then all of a sudden you're just gonna blow up at them. And like, no, we can't be having that. Pastor Cal asked her a really good question, which I had talked about a couple videos ago, about if Ryan remained the same, like nothing ever changed about him, would you be okay with this? And Clara said no, which I think is very important because like, yes, she's somewhat happy now. So she says, if y'all never have sex, if you just continue to not know when it's going to happen, will you be okay with that? And she wouldn't. So more reason why she needs to have a conversation with him. They do have a conversation. Ryan does not give her any type of closure or like make her feel more comfortable with the situation, because she was saying like, I know that you don't have a timeline. However, do you have an idea of when it will happen? And he was just like, I don't know. That's just very, I'm sure it's frustrating for her. You know what I'm saying? Because like, from her perspective, like she needs this, like this is how she feels loved, and it'll make her feel like he's more committed to her. And like to just have no idea when it will happen, I understand. I do also think it's interesting that if the roles were reversed, I don't think this would be the way the conversation would be going. I mean, it's literally like what Miles and Karen were going through last year. I think since it's the woman in this position, everyone's more so trying to find out like why Ryan doesn't want to have sex. Whereas if it was the man in the position of like wanting to have sex, then position, no pun intended. If it was the man who wanted to have sex but the woman didn't, it would just be more acceptable of like, just wait for her. You know what I'm saying? So that is an interesting dynamic. I do still think they just need to take it off the table completely and then just wait to see like what'll happen after decision day, because I think it will, especially if Ryan says yes on decision day, then it will inevitably happen. It just won't happen on Clara's timeline. All right, y'all, that wraps up my review of Married at First Sight, season 12, episode 13. I forgot to say at the beginning, but the couples are less than 3 weeks away from decision day. So we are winding down to the end of the season. I don't remember my predictions initially, but whenever we have like the finale and stuff, I will definitely flash back to what I said and compare it to how the decisions actually turned out. So the season's winding down. Please continue to watch and like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see y'all next time. Bye. I think she told him that she has high blood pressure. And so Dr. Pepper was like talking her through this and was just saying like, you know, when she's pregnant, and y'all, Briana must not know the definition of compromise. Compromise. They end up talking together at the apartment. Chris and Virginia. What am I talking about? The lack of sex can also translate as a lack of